Good morning, everyone. In the last session, we discussed about what is JSON, how to work with JSON data using Java application. So JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It is interoperable. Nothing but JSON will work for all the platforms. In the Windows, in the Linux, in the Mac, we can use the JSON data, and JSON will work for multiple platforms also, like Windows, Linux, and it supports for multiple languages as well. Nothing but Java can understand JSON, .NET also can understand the JSON. All the languages will support for JSON data. So that's why in the distributed application development, we will use JSON as a mediator between consumer and provider. Can you tell me what is provider? What is provider, guys? The application which is providing services to other application is called as a provider application. For example, we are taking IRCTC as a provider. By using IRCTC, we can directly book the ticket, and Make My Trip also will communicate with the IRCTC to book the ticket. What is a consumer? The application which is accessing services from other applications is called as a consumer application. IRCTC we are considering as a provider. Make My Trip we are calling as a consumer. Make My Trip and IRCTC will communicate with each other by using JSON data as a mediator. IRCTC will send Make My Trip will send passenger data to IRCTC. IRCTC will send ticket data to the Make My Trip in the JSON format. In order to work with JSON data in the Java application, we are using Jackson API. Jackson API is available, which is used to work with the JSON data. You can write the value, you can read the value. Write value means convert Java object to JSON. Read value means convert JSON data to Java object. Then after, we started developing REST API by using Spring Boot. Online people, is my voice clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes,
very
sir.
good. Fine. So we are trying to understand how to develop REST API by using Spring Boot. So in the Spring Boot, there is a dependency called Web Starter dependency is available. By using that Web Starter, we can develop REST API as well as web application. To develop the REST API using Spring Boot, we are going to work with some annotations. Can you tell me what are those annotations? REST controller, request param, path variable, request body, get mapping, post mapping, put mapping, delete mapping. What is the purpose of REST controller? It is used to make our class as a distributed component. If one class wants to communicate with if one project wants to communicate with the another project, then REST controllers will be used. REST controller nothing but controller plus response body. So your class will handle the request and your class will send direct response to the client. When you go for the REST controller, there is no UI. There is no UI when you go for REST controller. The next one is request param. So it is used to read query parameters from the URL. When a client is sending a GET request, he will send the data in the URL. That to read that URL data, we can go for request param annotation. Similarly, we have path variable. What is the purpose of path variable? It is used to read path parameters. Similarly, request body to read the data from the request body. Get mapping. I want to map my method to get request. Similarly, post mapping, put mapping, delete mapping. When we are working with REST API, mainly we are going to deal with get to post to put to delete methods to perform the operations, right? In the yesterday session, we created one REST controller also, and we are able to test it. How do we test that REST controller? By using Postman. REST controller means only business logic backend application. There is no UI available. That is the reason. In order to test our REST API, we are going to use Postman tool. We will use Postman tool. Okay. Now, Guys, here, when we are developing REST API application, REST controller methods, REST controller class will be available, which is a distributed component. REST controller class methods will be mapped to HTTP methods. Whatever the methods we are writing in the REST controller, those methods we need to map to HTTP methods. What are the HTTP methods available? Get method is available, post method is available, put method is available, and delete is available. So when we are developing the REST API, we need to make sure all our REST controller methods are mapped to HTTP methods. When we should map our method to GET request. So when we should map our method to GET request, method is responsible to send data to consumer. So any method which is responsible to send the data to consumer. Now, consumer want to get the book data. Consumer want to get the product data. Consumer want to get the ticket data. So my method is responsible to send the data to the consumer application. So when consumer want to get the data, then they will send a GET request. So the method which is responsible to send data to consumer, then we will go for get method. Okay. Now, next one is post method. What is the purpose of this? Method is responsible to create a resource or record. When consumer want to insert one record, they want to create one employee record, they want to create one product record, they want to create one book record. Whenever consumer want to create a record in the provider, then that method will be mapped to post request method. Okay. Then put method is responsible to update the record. Method is responsible to update a record. So when you want to update the record, then we are going to use put request method, then delete the name itself. Method is responsible to delete a record. So if you want to insert a record, then we will use post method. If you want to update the record, then we will use put method. If you want to delete the record, then we will use delete method. Get method, which is used to get the data. Get method is used to get the data. So HTTP, when to use get request method, when to map our method to get request, when to map our method to post request, put request, delete request, that maturity we should have. We are going to develop a REST API. That means we will create a REST controller. REST controller is responsible for B2B communication. One application can talk to another application by using REST controller. REST controller, nothing but controller plus response body. There is no UI. You send a request to the REST controller. REST controller will give you direct response. Inside the REST controller, we are going to write the methods, right? The methods are get request method, post request method, put request method, and delete request method. When we should write a get request method, if it is responsible to send the data to the consumer, then we will map that method to get request method. When to go for post request method, if that method is responsible to create a new record in the provider, then we will map it to post request method. Similarly, we will go for put request method. If it is responsible to update the record, then we will go for put request method. Next one is delete. If the method is responsible to delete a record, then we will go for delete request method. And another important point we need to remember, when we are working with this, 1 minute. When we are working with this HTTP request methods, we need to understand the request structure. We need to understand request structure. So HTTP request will be available. Inside this request, guys, header part will be available and body part will be available. I want to send one HTTP request to the server. Consumer will send a request to the server. When consumer sending the request to the server, our request will contain header part and body part. Header part is used to specify some metadata. Header part is used to specify metadata. Body part is used to specify business data. That business data is also called as payload. Now, Make My Trip application want to send passenger data to the IRCTC. Okay, so that Make My Trip application will send a request to the IRCTC. Make My Trip application will send one HTTP request to IRCTC application. Assume that this is IRCTC application. When Make My Trip is sending request to the IRCTC, that request will contain header part and body part. What will be there in the header? Header will contain metadata. Body will contain business data. Business data is nothing but payload. Business data nothing but payload. Now, this business data we are going to send in the form of XML or JSON. Business data will be sent to the provider in the form of XML or JSON. Are you getting my point? Now, here this body is not available when you go for GET request. When you go for GET request, this body will not be available. For POST request, for PUT request, for delete request, body is available. So consumer can send the data. Consumer can send the payload to the provider in the body. If it is POST or PUT or delete, why the body not available for GET request? What is the meaning of GET request? GET request is used to send the data to provider or get the data from the provider. Get the data from the provider. Consumer will send a GET request to get the data from the provider. And remember, when we are sending a GET request to the provider, body will not be available. Only header part will be available, body part will not be available. But if you go for POST request, PUT request, delete request, this body also will be available. Now, so REST controller methods will be mapped to HTTP methods. Get method, POST method, PUT method, delete method. Get method will not have request body. Get method will not have request body. Okay. What about POST, PUT and delete? POST, PUT and delete methods will have request body. What is the purpose of that request body? What is the purpose of request body? Request body is used to send a payload. Is used to send payload from consumer to provider in the form of XML or JSON. So when you are developing a distributed application, HTTP protocol will play very important role. Every method will be mapped to HTTP method. When you are sending a request from consumer to provider, you need to understand what type of request you are sending and where you need to send the data. Is it a GET request or POST or PUT or delete? When I will send a GET request to get the data from the provider, when you go for the GET request, body will not be available. But when you go for POST, PUT to delete request, body will be available. What is the purpose of request body? Request body is used to send payload to the provider. Now, Make My Trip is available, IRCTC available. Let's take this example. Make My Trip application is available and IRCTC application is available. Who is a provider? Who is a consumer? IRCTC is a provider. Make My Trip is a consumer. Now, Make My Trip want to book a train ticket for the customer. What request it has to send? Post. Correct. Because passenger data should be sent to the IRCTC. Passenger data will contain name, email, some phone number, Aadhaar number, date of birth, gender, from address to address. Lot of information will be available. With that information, one ticket should be created. One record should be created. When the record should be created, what type of request we need to use? We need to use a post request. Now, in the post request, header will be available, body will be available. In the header, metadata will be available. In the body, payload will be available. What is the payload here? Business data. What is the business data we are going to send to the IRCTC? Passenger data. What is the payload here? Passenger data. Make My Trip application will send passenger data to the IRCTC in the XML format or in the JSON format. Then IRCTC application will book the ticket for the passenger. IRCTC also will send response to the Make My Trip application by using response body. Okay, response header will be available and response body will be available. So HTTP request will be sent, HTTP response will be received. Make My Trip application will send HTTP request to the IRCTC. IRCTC will send HTTP response to the Make My Trip. So request will contain the header, body. Response also will contain the header and body. What is the meaning of a header? Header nothing but metadata. What is the body? Payload. When we are sending the request, the body contains passenger information. The body contains passenger information. Make My Trip will send passenger information to IRCTC in the request body. IRCTC will send ticket data as a response to the Make My Trip in the body. So without having the clarity on HTTP protocol, you cannot develop the REST APIs, because REST API is nothing but distributed application. One project is going to communicate with the another project. The two applications, one is called as a provider application, another one is called as a consumer application. Consumer and provider will communicate by using HTTP protocol as a mediator. Consumer will send HTTP request to the provider. Provider will send HTTP response to the consumer. In the HTTP protocol, mainly we will use four methods: get method, post method, put method, delete method. What is the meaning of a post method? Create the record. It will create the record. What is the meaning of a put method? It is used to update the record. Delete method to delete the record. Get method to get the record. Okay, now consumer provider side methods should be available. Inside the provider, we will create methods. These methods should be mapped to HTTP protocol. Then consumer will send a request to the provider. When the consumer is sending a request, consumer will send some data in the request. Okay, that data they will send in the body. That body represents payload. Payload will be available in the form of XML or JSON. Why we are using payload format as XML or JSON? Why not object? Interoperability. Because consumer and provider may not be developed by using same technology. My consumer is a .NET, my provider is Java. So for both technologies, the common format is XML or JSON. So that's why always payload will be available in the form of XML or JSON format. Consumer will send HTTP request, provider will send HTTP response. But get is a special method. Get is used to get the data. That's why for the get request, body will not be available. When the consumer sending a get request, consumer cannot send the payload. Are you getting my point? Consumer cannot send the payload to the provider using GET request. Why consumer cannot send the payload by using GET request? GET is not for sending the data. GET is used to get the data. That's why body is not available for the GET request. But if a consumer sending post, put, delete, then body will be available. Then consumer can send the data in the body. But for the GET request, consumer cannot send the data in the body. Are you able to follow this? Right. And the next one, HTTP protocol methods we understood. What is the purpose of these methods? When to go for which method? Getting the data, get method. Post, creating the record. Put, update the record. Delete, delete the record. Get method will not have request body. Post, put and delete methods will have request body. Request body is used to send payload from consumer to provider in the form of XML or JSON. The next one, response body will be available. What is the purpose of response body? Response body is used to send payload from provider to consumer. Payload from provider to consumer. Make My Trip will send passenger data in the request body. IRCTC will send ticket data in the response body. Like this, one application will communicate with the another application. Now, example. First point, Make My Trip will send passenger data to IRCTC in request body. In the request body, it may be XML or JSON. Can we call it as a payload? Yes, it is a payload. Then what IRCTC will do? IRCTC will send ticket data to Make My Trip in response body. In the response body, that also will be available in the XML or JSON format. So I hope now you got the clarity. What is the request body? What is response body? What is the request body? Consumer will send the data to provider. Consumer will send the payload to the provider. Payload nothing but business data. Payload can be XML. Payload can be JSON. Payload can be text also. It can be XML or it can be JSON or it can be text also. What about the response body? What about the response body? Response body nothing but provider will send payload to the consumer. Okay, good. HTTP protocol will be used as a mediator between consumer and provider. Okay, so HTTP protocol, HTTP will act as mediator between consumer and provider. So here HTTP methods available. Get request method, post request method, put request method is available. REST controller methods should be mapped to these HTTP protocol methods. Without mapping REST controller methods to HTTP methods, you cannot develop a REST API. Every method in the REST controller should map to HTTP protocol. When to map to which method depends on the method functionality. Method is used to get the data, get mapping. Method is used to update the data, put mapping. Method is used to create the record, post mapping. Method is used to delete the data, delete mapping. So you need to have that maturity to understand when to map which method to which request. Which method should be mapped to which HTTP request. You should understand based on the requirement. Okay. Then next one, get request will not have the body, but the remaining methods will have the body. When we are working with REST API, request body will be available, response body will be available. Request body will be used by consumer to send the payload to the provider. Provider will send the payload to the consumer by using response body. Okay. And the next one, HTTP status codes, guys. HTTP status codes will be available. When consumer send request to the provider, provider will send response to the consumer with some status code. Status codes will represent how the request processed by the provider. I'm a consumer, I'm using one application. You are provider, different application. I'm sending the request from my application to your application. Then your application will process my request, will send the response to me. How the request is processed? Is it successful? Is it failure? Is it rejected? Is there any problem? Is there any client mistake in the request? Is there any server mistake in the request? That status will be given to the consumer by using HTTP status code. Provider will send response to consumer using HTTP status code. Provider will send the response to consumer using HTTP status code. Let us observe this. Let me create one REST API, file new Spring Starter project, 20th application, Spring Boot, 19th JSON, it is in the different laptop. I will add that. Right, 20th application, Spring Boot, REST API, Java project I'm creating, Maven, Java version 17. Packaging type I'm using as jar file. Good. Next, what is the dependency we need? Web starter we need. That's it. Next, finish. Now, so my REST API project is getting created. My REST API project is created. Now, inside this project, pom.xml, you can see the dependency. Web starter is available. Next one. Let us create one REST controller, new class dot REST package, message REST controller. Any class name you can take. Message REST controller. Perfect. Let us map this method to the annotation @REST controller. So if you go to @REST controller annotation, what is this? Controller plus response body. REST controller nothing but controller plus response body. Okay. Next one. Let us write here a method. Public string get welcome message. Now, string message model is not required. What is the purpose of model? To send the data to the UI in the form of key value. Do we have the UI? No, it is pure backend application. It is pure backend application. String message, welcome to REST API. Okay, now I want to return that message. Now, this method should send the data to the consumer. Consumer will get the message. So I need to map this method to the HTTP request. If I don't map this method to HTTP request, can anybody access my method? No. Consumer cannot access this method. I need to map this method to a request. How to map this method to a request, guys? Go for get mapping. What is the meaning of get mapping here? What is the meaning of get mapping here? Consumer can send get request to access my method. Consumer can send get request to access my method. This method will have request body or will not have request body. Body will not be available. Why the body will not be available? Because it is a get request. Get request will not contain the body. Okay. Now, method is available. It is mapped to get request. Let us run this. Run as boot application. By default, Tomcat will be used as a embedded container. Server is started. Now I want to test this method. Is it working as expected or not? I want to test it. Can we do that? How to test it? As it is a get request from the browser also you can test it. From the Postman also you can test it. What is the best option? Postman. Go to the Postman. Go to the Postman. Send a get request and see the response we are getting from the provider. Now, Can I call this application as a provider application now? Yes, can I call it as a provider? Yes, it is a provider application. Localhost colon 8080 slash welcome. Now here, what is the request type? This welcome URL method mapped to which type of request, guys? It is mapped to get request. So let's go to the Postman. Let us send a get request. Localhost colon 8080 slash welcome. Click on send. When I click on send, am I getting the response? Yes. Can you see this one? 200. Okay. 200 represents success. Whatever the request you have sent, server able to process the request successfully and send the response. So that 200 is called status code. When the consumer, my Postman is acting as a consumer. My REST API is developed by using Spring Boot. That is having one get request method. Now I am using my consumer is not available. I am using Postman as a consumer. By using Postman, I am sending a HTTP request to the provider. Provider processed my request, send the response. How the request is processed? Successfully it processed. How I will understand that it is success? I am getting 200. 200 is a status code which will represent success. Whatever the request you send, successfully that request got processed. So when we are developing REST API, status codes also very important. For example, now I will send the request with the welcomes. I'm sending a request with the welcomes. Observe the status code. Click on send. What is the status code I'm getting? 404 not found. Boss, whatever the URL you are trying to access, not available in the provider. Not found. Resource not found. 404 nothing but whatever the resource you are trying to access, that is not available. Okay. Now let me do one more thing. Welcome only. Let me make a post request. But actually it is mapped to which request? Get request. But what request I am sending? Post request. Click on send. Then what is the status code I am getting? 405 method not allowed. Boss, in the provider, that method is mapped to get request, but you are sending a post request not allowed. What is the status code for that? 405. 405 will represent method not allowed. 200, 404, 405. 200 means success. 404 means client problem. Client is trying to access a method which is not available in the provider. When you will get the 405, method is mapped to one HTTP request, but you are sending another HTTP request. Then you will get 405 method not allowed. Able to follow this? For example, when this method is executing, there is some problem in the method. When I am executing this method, there is some problem in the method. Some exception occurred in the method. When exception occurred in the method, how it will behave? Get request welcome. Correct method only, correct URL pattern only. Click on send. What is the status code? 500. What is the meaning of 500? Server problem. There is an exception in the server. Our method is not executed completely. Then you will get the status code as a 500. In the interview, they will ask these questions also. When you will get the 404, when you will get the 401, when you will get 405, when you will get the 500. Can you tell me what are the status codes you have seen in the REST API? 200, 404, 500, 405 available. Now, so for every status code, there is a reason, right? So 200 means success. 404 means resource not found. 405 means method not allowed. 500 means server problem. Okay. Provider will send response to consumer using HTTP status code. Now, in this HTTP status code, two XX category is available which will represent success. So any status code from 200 to 299 is called 2XX status code which will represent success. 200, 201, 202, 203, 204 up to 299, those are called success status codes. Any status code which is related to 4XX, that is called client error. Client nothing but consumer is sending a invalid request to the provider. Maybe invalid method, maybe invalid URL, maybe some incorrect formula that they are applying to access a server. Then you will get the 4XX status code. When I say 4XX, 400 to 499. So 2XX nothing but any number between 200 to 299 will represent success only. Any number from 400 to 499 will represent as a client error. And we have 5XX, any number from 500 to 599, it will represent server error. So mainly in the REST API development, we are going to see these HTTP status codes. Provider will send response to consumer using status code. 2XX represent success. 4XX represents client error. 5XX represents server error. Are you guys able to follow me? Now, if you see in my REST API method, currently I am writing one method. That method is simply mapped to get request. My method is simply mapped to get request. So this method is sending a message as a response. Inside the method, is there any logic available to send the status code to the client? Is my provider deciding which status code should send to the client? No. By default, Spring Boot is taking care of that status code. We are getting 200 as a success status code. By default, we are getting the status code as a 200. But in the real time, I want to customize the status code. Sometimes I want to send 200. Sometimes I want to send 201. Sometimes 202, 203, 204, 405, 406, 401. I want to decide status code in the response. As of now, I am deciding the status code, or Spring Boot deciding the status code. Spring Boot is deciding the status code. Okay, now let me write one method, public string do action something. Public string do action system.out.println do action method call. I want to write some business logic in this method, but I don't want to return anything as a response. Earlier, my method is returning some response. Now my method is not returning any response. Now I want to map it to get mapping. Let me write the URL pattern as action. Let me write the URL pattern as a action. What is the return type of the method? Void, nothing. Method is not returning anything. Now let's run this application. See the behavior. Run as boot app. Clear the console. Go to Postman. I'm sending the request to first method welcome. What is that? We are getting the response successfully 200. That is okay. Now let me go for action. Action. See the console. Method is called or not. Clear the console. Then send the request. Method is called or not. I'm able to send the request. Am I getting any response? Am I getting any response? Is there any response that method is sending to the consumer? No. When the method is not sending the response to the consumer, status code should be 204, not the 200. 204 means no response. Request is sent, method executed, your request processed successfully. No need to send any response to the consumer. When our method is not sending response to the consumer, status code should be 204. 204 means no content. Okay means response is sent to the consumer. But this method sending the response, not sending the response, not sending the response. When this method is not sending the response to the consumer, it should give the status code as 204, not the 200. As I told you, every status code having a special meaning. 200 means okay. Consumer send a request, provider processed it, provider sent a response to the consumer. In that scenario, we need to go for 200. But in the second scenario, consumer send a request, it processed, but no response to give to the consumer. We are not giving any response to the consumer. When we are not giving any response to the consumer, status code should be 204. Status code should be 204. So programmatically, we need to decide status codes in our application. If you don't decide the status code, by default Spring Boot will take it as a 200. By default will take it as a 200. I don't want 200. I want 204. I want to decide status code for my application. Getting my point? If you want to decide status code for your application, instead of taking string as a return type, we need to take the return type as a response entity. Earlier, what is the return type I have taken? Direct string I am returning. Now I am taking response entity as a return type. What is the meaning of response entity? We can decide status code for the response. When you take response entity as a return type of your method, you can decide what is the status code you want to send to the consumer. When you have the response entity, let us create like this. New, I'm creating response entity object. What is the body? What is the status code you want to send? Now, new response entity status code. I can body, my body is message status code http status dot okay. What is the meaning of okay status code? Okay means success. Now return this object. Now if you go to HTTP status, you will understand the codes. Okay. Now here codes are available. What is this one? 200. Okay. 201 success. 202 accepted. 203 successful. No authoritative information. What is this? 204 no content. 205, 206, 7, 8, 226, then 300. Go to 400. What is the 400? Bad request. 401 unauthorized. 402 payment required. 403 forbidden. 404, 405 not allowed. 406 not acceptable. 407 proxy. 408 timeout. 409 conflict. 410 gone. 411 length. 412 413 414 415 16 17 18. Oh my god, there are so many codes available. Next one, 500. What is the 500? Internal server error. 501 502 bad gateway. 503 service unavailable. 504 for every status code there is a meaning. In the interview they will ask what is the meaning of this status code. Now my method want to send 200 status code. So if you take direct string as a response, it will give 200 as a status code. When you don't want to give status code default status code, if you want to customize the status code, then what you need to take as a return type? We need to take the response entity. Then I'm creating object for the response entity. This is first parameter, my body, response body. Whatever the data that you want to send in the response body, that is first parameter. What status code you want to send, that is second parameter. So programmatically you can decide what status code you want to send to the consumer. If you don't write it programmatically, boot will send default status code. Now, void. In this method, I want to send, in this method, I want to send 204 as a status code. If I take void as a return type, what is the status code is coming to the consumer? What is the status code is coming to the consumer? 200. What is the meaning of 200? Okay. But actually, what status code should come to the consumer? 204, because there is no content. Method is not returning anything. Instead of void, let us take response entity of void. Now, response entity of void. Return new response entity. Body not available. First parameter not available. Only one parameter. Earlier, body available, status code available. Now, only status code is available. HTTP status dot no content. HTTP status dot no content. What is the meaning of no content? What is the meaning of no content? Method is not sending anything to the consumer. Request is coming, method is executed, but we are not sending anything to the consumer. In that scenario, we will use no content as a status message. No content means what is the number? 204 is the number for that. Okay, good. In one method, you see response entity class. Can I say it is two parameterized constructor? Can I say this is one parameterized constructor? So two parameter means body, what data you want to send in the body, what is the status code you want to send. When I go for one parameter, direct status code we are sending. Go to response entity, see that how many constructors available, status code, body and status code, map and status code, body and map and status code, body, map and status code is available. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 constructors available in the response entity. So here I am using one constructor. Here I am using one constructor. First parameter is the body. Second parameter is the status code. Here I am using another constructor which is sending only status code, no body, no content. What is response entity? It is a predefined class in the Spring Web MVC which is used to construct the response to the consumer. What body you want to send in the response and what status code you want to send in the response, programmatically you can decide. Are you getting my point? Now, suppose if I am writing one method, public string get greet message. Public string get greet message, string message is equal to good morning. String message is equal to good morning, return message. What this method is returning? What this method is returning? Direct string is returning. What is the status code it will take, guys? If the method is executed successfully, 200. So this logic will do the same thing. So whatever the message you are returning, it will go as a body. Status code by default 200. Here boot will take care of that body and status code. Here programmer is taking care of the body and status code. Are you getting my point? If you want to return your own status code, if you want to customize the status code for the response, this approach we need to follow. So you take response entity as a parameter. You create the object for the response entity. You decide what body and what status code you want to send to the consumer. Now, let us run this application. Run as boot application, started, go to browser. Let me send request for greet method. Send the request. Good morning. Status code 200. Who decided status code is 200? Who decided that status code is 200? The status code it is decided by our Spring Boot. Now let's go for welcome. Let's go for welcome. Who decided this status code? Programmer is deciding that status code. What is the status code we are getting? 200 we are getting as a status code. Now let's go for action. Action, there is a method is available. Action, there is a method available. So what we are going to do in the action? What we are going to get as a status code? 204. What is the meaning of 204? No can't. So programmatically, can we decide status code to the response? Programmatically, can we decide the status code in the response? Yes, programmatically we can decide status code in the response. Are you guys getting my point? Programmatically we can decide status code in the response. Very good, guys. Good. What is the response entity? What is response entity? It is used to decide what status code we need to send to the client. What status code we need to send to the client, that we will decide by using this response entity. Now, all these methods are mapped to get request. Now, can consumer send the data to the get request in the body? Can you read? Now, I want to send a get request to the server. When I want to send a get request to the server, can I send the data in the body? What it is saying, can you read this? What it is sending, can you read this? This request does not have a body. This request does not have a body. Why the body not available? Why the body not available? Get request means not to send the data. Get request means get the data. That's why body will not be available. If I go to post, request, then body will be available. If I go for post request, then body will be available. For the get request, we cannot send the data in the body. Then how to send some data to the REST API when we are using a GET request? Now, I want to get the customer. I want to get the customer based on the customer ID. I want to get the customer based on the customer ID. How to send that ID to the REST API using GET request? So GET request will not have a body. Suppose if you want to send some data to the GET request, we need to use body. No, we cannot use the body. We need to use path parameter or query parameter. So when we should use path parameter or query parameter? When you are sending GET request to the REST API, if you want to send some data in the GET request, as body will not be available, we need to use query parameters or we need to use path parameters. Are you able to follow this? Query parameters and path parameters will be available. Now, greet method, I want to take name as a query parameter. I want to take the name as a parameter. So name will come in the URL in the form of key value. How to read that query parameter? By using a annotation called request param. What is the key of the request param? Name. Name is a key. For that key, I want to get the value. Then you keep the name here. You keep the name here and write some comma. Good morning. You keep the name and write the comma. So my greet method is expecting name. Greet method is mapped to which request, guys? Get request. Body will be available or body will not be available. That's why I'm taking request param. What is the meaning of request param? Query parameter. Now go to our URL. Let us send a get request with the query parameter. Go to URL. Let us send a get request with the query parameter. Now go to Postman. Run this application. Run this application. Refresh. Clear this. Run as boot app. Run as boot app. Clear that console. Now let's make a request for greet. Send the request. What happened? Earlier we got 404. Now we are getting 400. What is the difference between 400 and 404? What is the difference between 400 and 404? 400 means bad request. 404 means resource not found. Bad request and resource not found. Are you guys clear with my point? Huh. That greet method expecting a query parameter, but we are not sending that query parameter. That's why it is a bad request. Our method is expecting a query parameter, but we are not sending that query parameter. That's why we are getting as a bad request. Able to follow me? Now, how to send that query parameter? Question mark, name is equal to some value. Name is equal to some value. This is called query parameter. So how to read that query parameters? By using which annotation, guys? By using request param annotation. By using request param annotation. Click on send. Now, are we getting the response? What is the status code? 200. Okay. Key comma value. We are getting the response in the form of text data, which is having the status code as a 200 with a okay. Suppose if I don't send it, bad request. Why we are getting as a bad request? That get request method is expecting query parameter in the URL. That get request method is expecting query parameter in the URL. Okay, guys. Good. Fine. Next one. Suppose I want to take a path parameter. Query parameter will be available in the form of key and value. I don't want to send the data in the form of key and value. I want to send the value directly. Then go for path parameter. When you go for path parameter, we are going to specify placeholder. Now, let me read the name. Let me read the name. How I will get this name? Path variable. Okay. Query parameter already we discussed in the WebMVC. What is query parameter and what is path parameter? To read the query parameter, we will use request param annotation. To read the path variable, to read the path parameter, we will use path variable annotation. We will use the path variable annotation. Are you guys getting my point? Request param is available, path variable is available. Let me take that name and let me give welcome to REST API. When you are using path variable, you need to specify that in the URL pattern. For query parameter, no need to specify. For path variable, we have to specify. Are you clear? Good. Stop it. Run as boot app. Clear the console. Got it? Now, greet. How I am sending the name to the greet method? Query parameter. Now, let's go for welcome / direct name. Path parameter means direct value. Query parameter means key value. Click on send. Am I able to get the response? Yes, we are able to develop a get request method which is taking path parameter, which is taking query parameter. Tomorrow we will understand when to go for path parameter, when to go for query parameter. Are you able to follow this? Today, I want you to develop this REST API using response entity, get request method with query parameter, get request method with path parameter, and test it by using Postman. Clear, guys? Any doubts, anyone? Why we are using query parameters, path parameters here? It is a GET request, body will not be available. That is the reason we are taking either query parameter or path parameter. If it is a post request, body will be available. For put request, body. For delete request, body. As it is a GET request, body is not available. As it is a GET request, body will not be available. Are you guys able to follow this? Good. Any questions, anyone? Still, are we using any JSON data? Am I using any JSON data? No. So tomorrow we will see how to return the JSON as a response. Good. Fine, guys. Thank you. With this, I'm stopping for today. We'll meet in the tomorrow session. Now, I'm going to add this REST controller, which is using path parameters as well as query parameters. So develop this REST API and test it by using Postman. Good. Online students, anyone having any questions? You can unmute and you can ask me. Meanwhile, I will upload the notes.
Hello, sir.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yep.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Yes,
go
madam,
ahead,
I
go
can
ahead.
hear you.
Sir, could you give an example in which scenario we return that no content as a status code?
We will see that. Once we go for the project development, we will understand.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Ashok sir, how we can send a header like?
We'll come to that, sir. Header sending
Okay.
also we will be seeing that.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Like provider and consumer having like header same both side returning the same header from the provider app also.
We will see that, sir. I'm not talking anything about the headers as of now. Okay. So once we go to the
Okay.
header part, then you will understand how do we return the header.
Okay.
Hi, Ashok, this is Akshay.
Yeah. Hi,
Uh,
Akshay.
so in there is one method if I mapped with the get, right? Get mapping. And you
Correct.
have written the request map param. So I
Correct.
tried without request param, it's working. So what could be the reason?
Maybe some default value it is taking.
I tried in the URL, I have given same name, but I have not used this request parameter.
Share that screenshot in the group, sir. I will check it.
Okay.
Yeah. So guys, please do the practice before coming to tomorrow's session, right? Get request we are trying to understand with the path parameters and query parameters.
Ashok, if you use Angular, then same we use REST controller.
Yes, sir. Yes. If your front end is Angular or React also, in the back end REST controller will be available.
We won't use controller, right? Last week we used controller, right?
Controller we will use only if you have UI in the project. So tomorrow UI will be in the Angular. The backend will be only REST API, REST controller.
Ashok sir.
Yep.
JRTP will start again one more batch.
In the January end it will start, sir.
Thank you.
Ashok?
Yes.
In backup videos, 30th December recordings are not there.
I will check it today once I will upload.
Okay.
Yeah, hi Ashok. This is
Hello.
Sudhakar.
Yes, sir. Tell me.
Do we cover the collection of this one API? How do we import the Postman?
Collection of?
The collection of APIs we have, right? For example, the
Collection of
Postman
APIs.
collection, Postman collections.
Not, sir. Not yet covered.
Not yet covered. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ashok. Yeah, apart from get and post, delete.
Sir, today we understood only guest. In the coming classes, post, put, delete, we are going to learn.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Cool, guys. Fine. Thank you. With this, I'm stopping for today. Please do the practice before coming to tomorrow's session. We'll meet in the tomorrow's class. Thank you, guys.